All right, welcome back to Virtual IoT and Edge Days 2022. Last but not least, our presentation on revolutionizing AI at the edge with ioFog 3.0, the brand new ioFog 3.0. So our speaker for this presentation is Kilton Hopkins. Kilton is the Chief Technology Officer at EdgeWorks, a strategic member of the Eclipse Edge Native Working Group, and a contributor to the Eclipse IoT Working Group as well. Kilton is a frequent speaker for those of you who are familiar with our ecosystem, and always a great one. So I'm looking forward to his presentation. Now, if you have any questions during the talk, please add them to the questions section in Swapcard. And at the end of the presentation, I will convey those questions to Kilton so he can answer them. So Kilton, if you're ready, up to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Frederick. Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to be here today. Boy, I think we have a really good presentation and a really good demo that I'm excited to show. As described, today's talk is revolutionizing AI at the edge with the new release of ioFog 3. Let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot of stuff to show. So here's the agenda for what we're going to be covering. I want to talk about the ioFog 3 release, and then I want to dive into a couple of key concepts in this release that are advancements in edge computing provided by ioFog. One is edge application templates, and the other is edge resources. After describing those in some detail, it will become a little bit more apparent how one could actually revolutionize AI at the edge, which is, it's not just hyperbole there. I really think that it is possible to strategically change the way AI is done at the edge. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how ioFog 3 makes that possible, specifically what it provides that makes this all doable. Then a couple of notes on how you can use open infrastructure to build a solution. Then I'm going to get into a demo, and then I'll put up some helpful links while we do some Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started. So the new Eclipse ioFog 3 release, there's a couple of major themes in it, and I'll walk through those themes and break down what's been added. As we go farther and farther on the path of edge computing, all of the different open source projects available on the planet are getting farther down the line of large scale and global deployment and so on. ioFog is no exception to this. So what have we added to reach greater scale and global deployment? Well, one, when you start to deploy edge microservices in different time zones, you notice that operating solutions that go across time zones or that are deployed to different customers in different time zones might catch you up. And so part of edge ops, or operating edge applications, is being able to automate things that are gotchas that keep coming up. So we've added in the ability to inject the time zone from the edge node into the microservice without you needing to remember to set it. This is very important for when you're hosting like a UI service at an edge and so on. Also helpful is that we've moved the ioFog agent Linux package into an any distro label, which means that you no longer need to have a package prepared for a new release of a Linux distro. And so if you're going to use something like perhaps a Mint or Mendel, you might have come across before the need to add that distro into the list or produce a new package for yourself because it wasn't yet done by the code contributors. Now you can use any, which is just helpful for getting out there across the globe as there's a variety of operating systems in play. Another thing that we added is the ability to take more control over certificate authorities, the trust anchors that are available in the system. The default ones, these things age, and you may have a deployment requiring you to add a certificate authority that just simply isn't in the chain that you would expect from all of the normal stuff, like reaching Docker Hub or whatever. And so you have the ability to do that now. It's more global scale deployment. We also have added the ability to add a plugin for customizing the ioFog agent installation process. This is great because you can now plan how to roll out for your particular edge nodes for a specific customer, and it's a plugin model for being able to do so. To help a little bit more with edge ops, upgrade and rollback of the ioFog agent versions, and that command line tool that you want there is ioFog CTL, available as part of the Eclipse ioFog software suite. And we've added UDP port mapping support, as that had arisen in the community as something that folks needed. Now let's talk about one of the other major themes, edge application templates. And I'm going to give some examples and dive in greater detail, but the gist of it here is that any edge application can now be made into a template using standard YAML file. The same type of YAML file you would normally use for a fixed deploy can be a flexible deploy. And we've chosen Liquid.js as a standard for templating because it's popular, it is simple, easy to understand, a lot of resources for looking up how to phrase things for templating. And all of this provides the ability to create app stores on top of Eclipse ioFog, meaning that you can provide any set of templates and host them in any way you'd like for your end users or customers, or for internally if it's an internal project you're doing with ioFog. And this would allow you then to say, oh, I'd like to deploy this application, and the templating will provide the ability for that to deploy to an edge node that wasn't previously in the infrastructure, and you're just becoming aware of its information. The templating will allow you to apply to that. So very exciting, and I think this is where we've all been wanting to head with edge computing, is into these paradigms. Enhancement of management of edge applications. Now you can get a download percentage, bit of download percentage information for tracking and reporting when you push microservices to edge nodes. This is really helpful because if one of your edge nodes doesn't have super high connectivity, you might be wondering, is it there yet? Is it started yet? And although previously you could see that it was queued, pulling, and starting, now you can see that maybe it's taking a long time to pull and download, and you can track the percentage and know about when it might be ready. Logs are now available in JSON format for just easier integration with a variety of tools, allowing you to drop them directly into log management tools, or simply browse them more easily if you're going to do it in the raw. When mapping volumes for edge microservices to edge nodes, a common problem over the last couple of ioFog versions has been that you might have a microservice failure to start because the volumes that it needs are not existent on the host, for example. When you map volumes now, we pass the granular errors all the way through the control plane, so that as an administrator, as an edge ops person, you can get insight into that without needing to go out to the edge node and look at what went wrong. There's also a lot of UI enhancements to the GUI component of Eclipse ioFog called ECN Viewer. So all of these things that I'm mentioning here manifest in that UI, and you should check out an enhanced look and feel. The last major theme is called Edge Resources. And this is a huge advancement. There's a lot of work happening in various open source projects. One that comes to mind in the Kubernetes space is a Microsoft supported project called Acri that allows you to add edge resources in the Kubernetes land. So with ioFog, we have added our version of Edge Resources, which is an open mapping, allowing you to take anything you find at the edge and associate it with an edge compute node. And what happens then is that this information becomes part of that edge node's abstraction model. And this flows up to the control plane, allowing you to do all kinds of things. You can make orchestration decisions. You can do matching of appropriate microservices based on which edge resources are available. Or you can simply browse the edge resources attached to a device and say, oh, that's interesting. It has a camera, or it has an AI accelerator. And so all of this lays groundwork for some amazing stuff. ioFog 3 is due for a release. We're going to do the final release either in the summer or perhaps in the fall. And the beta version is now, I believe, beta 7 has been out for quite a while. You're ready to use it now if you want to go ahead, but know that the official release may have even more goodies as it comes out soon. So let's take a look at edge application templates. What I have here is a little screenshot of the application YAML, but normally where we have these curly brackets and some tags, normally you would have some information pertaining to a specific deploy. And so this is following the infrastructure as code paradigm, in which you would use a YAML file to define not only how you would set up edge nodes, but also how you would deploy an edge application across those nodes, all stuff that should be very familiar if you're working with cloud systems today. But at the edge, you then find that edge environments are different, and it would be really beneficial to say, I might want to directly choose which edge node to deploy to. I might want to set some config and require that whoever deploys this application enters that config. You'll notice in the middle here, there's a section that says data label, and then you've got in curly braces there, username. This is an example of what you would do to deploy for a customer. And as an application template, instead of having information you would need to remember to change, you now can be prompted to fill in this information as you deploy, making the App Store possibility come to life here. And so if you can look up how to work with Liquid.js, you can understand everything about Edge application templates. I'm also going to dive a little bit more into this before I do the demo by taking a look at the documentation site for ioFog 3. Let's take a look real quick, though, at Edge resources, an example, and get you familiar with that. Similar concept here. We have YAML, and you can see that the API version, iofog.org v3, and the kind, Edge resource. It's a new introduction into Eclipse ioFog. And what you can do here is define the Edge resource and some information about where you might find it in terms of network connectivity if it's not directly integrated into the Edge node. And then you can label it, give a description, what interface protocol do we use, et cetera, et cetera. And this information can be deployed on top of an Edge node. It can also be loaded in a way that the Edge node has that preloaded. This will pass to the control plane, and you can make decisions from there, including use the interface information to expose any kind of APIs or UI that you might want to use to be able to drive that Edge resource all the way through from the other side, because you've gotten information about how to work with it. Super exciting stuff, and this is a very flexible mapping, so it's possible to do it with any way that you can discover and drop in resources, including mapping them beforehand for deploys. So let's talk for a moment of the setup. How would one revolutionize AI at the edge? No joke here. This is not just hyperbole. So to do this, I think we have to get real about scale, and we have to understand AI at the edge really deeply and just kind of matter of fact. So let's be honest. The drivers for using AI at the edge are these primarily: data volume. So you have too high of a volume of data. It's a big incentive to push your stuff to the edge. Latency, no way around that. You can't stream anything to the cloud and back any faster than you can stream things to the cloud and back. So being present on an edge device, it's the way to reduce latency. Privacy, it's kind of obvious. You keep it at the edge, and there it's all yours. And operating cost. And the thing to note about operating cost is, if you use cloud AI services, not only do you need to move the data to the cloud AI service, but then you will pay per process. Whereas after owning the edge hardware and deploying your AI solution to that edge hardware, although you have to pay for electricity, all of the operating cost of that AI processing is essentially free from then on out. That's very attractive. So if these are the drivers, then how does that translate into adoption? Well, the demand for edge AI is actually, like most things in the world, only related to how well it maps to business goals. ROI, return on investment, is still king. It all comes down to what business goals you're trying to achieve with it, and that really drives adoption. You might have some R&D, some tire kicking, let me check this out, let me get into edge AI and see what's possible, but real movement happens when you map to a business goal. And the users here, therefore, are not necessarily AI researchers. Kind of makes sense. It would actually be the people that are building business applications and solution providers, the people that build and sell full solutions. So if those are the users and the demand is related to business goals, then that would mean that we need to take a look at how to fit for a type of developer that maybe is not an expert at AI and not an expert at Edge. We've discovered over time that computer vision applied to streaming video is a killer app for the Edge, and a killer app especially for Edge AI. Real-time interactive AI solutions are not possible without using the Edge, primarily for that data volume and latency concern. And what this comes down to now is that every industry and every vertical is going to use this differently, but they know what to do. They actually know what it is they'd like to build. And so if we get real about that, it becomes a matter of enabling AI edge applications to be built out rather than trying to build a solution that is universal across verticals. That's not really possible. Or build a platform that's cloud-centric when you know that people would like to be doing the stuff at the edge. That's not quite appropriate either, right? So this is how we can do it. And so then to go about revolutionizing AI at the edge, we need to address all three of the main pillars that would unlock Edge AI. The first is enabling the building of Edge AI solutions as it matches for the average developer. So just think the business application developer that you probably know. We all know people in different industries that do this sort of thing and make solutions. Unlock the AI development, Edge AI development for them. And a big part of that is that Eclipse ioFog has provided a microservices approach to Edge applications since its inception. And that is digestible by the average developer as opposed to working with C libraries or changing firmware and preloading operating systems with drivers. It's much better to be microservices based. The next pillar is that deploying Edge AI solutions into production has to be turnkey. And this is because even if you have a solution that's ready to go to the edge in terms of software, if you do not have a way to deploy it at scale, then you're going to end up having to do a full industrial design cycle, which might take a year, 2 years, 6 months at minimum, I would think, absolute minimum, much more likely a year. And this means that the solution software could be ready, but you can't deploy the solution until you have something to put it on that is ready to ship and stand up at customer sites. So that pillar must be addressed. And the third, and the one that's probably impacted the most by Eclipse ioFog 3 is operating Edge AI solutions has to be scalable, and it has to be compliant with the end customer scenarios. And what I mean by that is if you deploy Edge operations into a customer site and you have to change their environment, such as add VPN connectivity or open ports to the outside world, you're very likely going to run into frictions with that customer at that deploy site, and it might even limit which customers are willing to accept your solution. So to operate Edge AI solutions, not only does it need to be scalable and ready and well-baked, but it also needs to have certain attributes that reduce the frictions to getting into customer sites. So if that's how we revolutionize, then how does ioFog 3 provide pieces? There are so many. I listed a bunch here and I put at the bottom so much more because there really could be easily 3 times as many as I've listed here. But let's walk through a couple of them. So you absolutely have to be able to map the edge resources such as camera and the AI accelerator silicon onto that edge node so that you can do proper deployment, management, and so on. And that's new with ioFog 3, as I mentioned, edge resources. The deployment of applications across various customers with templates, that's your application templates in action. And if you don't have this, then every deployment requires too much manpower. And so this is a key addition that unlocks scale AI at the edge. You have to have trustworthy execution of edge microservices. That's been a core thing in Eclipse ioFog from the beginning, but just know that it gets more and more trustworthy as time goes on. And at this point, I would say I would probably trust my edge nodes running ioFog to run software more than I would even trust my MacBook when I reboot it to start up what I told it to start up. And you also need, we get it from ioFog, the management of configuration for both the edge nodes and the applications running on them. That's how you would stay off of a customer physical site and still be able to do management. A set of APIs to build against, and I'm going to showcase some of the things that you can build on top of the ioFog APIs. Need the ability to update those Edge AI solutions remotely. This makes sense. It's make improvements and want to push it to customer sites. I mentioned that customer environment. Well, no open ports and no VPNs. That's a crucial thing that ioFog 3 provides, and should enable you to do a lot more at customer sites with a lot fewer complaints and a lot easier to deploy, because it just punches out on its own in a secure way, and you don't have to worry about opening up privileged access or getting their network engineers involved. We also need complete control over data flow. Turns out that having an opinion in an edge infrastructure platform about where your data needs to go is very problematic for people building solutions, because the data actually coming from the edge should be able to go anywhere, and ioFog provides that. How about some command line tools for deployment and management? You get those as well. And then public services for accessing edge nodes when needed. This is great for doing remote support, for example, logging into the on-site UI and helping the customer reconfigure things if needed, and then repealing that public service link and having no connection any longer when the support session ends. Very good stuff. So if that's what's provided, then how would you use open infrastructure, Eclipse ioFog 3, to build a full system? Well, I'm going to showcase a really great success story, which is something we've built at Edgeworks called the Darcy AI platform, and it couldn't be done without ioFog 3. And so my recommendation, look at Eclipse ioFog 3 as your edge infrastructure. And if needed, you can build a custom UI. You also might just want to use ECN Viewer because it's sufficient. There's a comprehensive set of APIs that you can build against. Use these to automate and to activate all of the things that you want at the edge, but perhaps make it just a single push button for your end customer, and then use the APIs to do that, execute those actions behind the scenes. And you might want to build custom deployment steps, making it really easy for you to ship something to your customers and have them turn it on and deploy the applications. And then identify the pieces you still need. Those pieces are likely to be specific to your vertical, so only you would know how to build that full system, where the common infrastructure hands off, and then you need something that might be particular to healthcare or mining or manufacturing. And additionally, I would recommend leverage the Edge Native Working Group and Eclipse Foundation community. So you can use the Eclipse ioFog or the Edge Native Working Group communities on Slack. Pop in, join, ask questions, see what the community can do to help you out there. And look for the pieces in the entire Eclipse ecosystem that have already been solved. There's so many good pieces out there that are absolute expert grade with a ton of support and great documentation and example code. And that's the first place I look, is like Eclipse IoT projects if I need anything in that space. I'm sure it's already been done, and if not, I would be surprised. And then finally, bring your industry expertise into the open source community, so that you can not only get your needs met for your vertical, but also so that you can give back to this community for what it's giving you, which is help the community understand what might still not be solved in edge computing that's needed, and you would have insight coming from a particular vertical. So I think it's demo time. I'm going to show some great stuff. So as I exit full screen here, I think I'll take just a moment to show, this is the upcoming ioFog 3 enhanced documentation. And so the iofog.org, of course, you're looking at the pre-release here with me. That's why you attend these talks, is to see this great stuff. But you'll find some additional insights about ioFog have been provided here to help you understand more about what you're doing with it, and the reasons why you should be using it. And for those front runner themes that are coming with ioFog 3, you can go in here and learn all about application templates and how to create one, and how to do all of the steps that you would like to do in offering those templated applications to other people that you're working with, or whoever's doing edge ops. And the same thing goes for edge resources. So you'll be able to pop in here and learn all about edge resources, and how to create and how to deploy it against an edge node, how to list them out command line style, where to find them, how to detach them, et cetera, et cetera. So really good stuff. So, okay, I'm going to do a pretty deep demo with several steps. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show, built on top of ioFog 3, the type of amazing full solution or full platform that you also can build. And I'm going to keep with the theme of revolutionizing AI at the edge to show the absolute power of some of these new features in ioFog 3. And so the first thing I'm going to do is, well, this is the Darcy Cloud built on top of ioFog 3. As I mentioned, can't be built without it. Now, we lean heavily on that wonderful open source infrastructure that we are major contributors to at Edgeworks. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here, and I'll just use my continue with Google. And as I get into my account, I've set this up for demo such that I don't have anything here. And that's by design. What I'm going to do is I have a Raspberry Pi. You should be familiar with these if you've done anything at Edge to date. I have an attached Google Coral AI accelerator. That's important because as an Edge resource, we're going to be able to leverage that. And I also have a camera attached to it so that I can do some computer vision, AI application deployment, and so on. Well, so I'm going to go ahead and add that node into my my Edge project here, which is common concept in Eclipse ioFog called an Edge Compute Network, or an ECN. Okay, let's go ahead and add a node. This comes up. I need to copy this script. What this is going to do is it's going to do that custom agent install that I mentioned that you also can expand the raw ioFog agent install and do something similar. And if we want to run this in the background, all I need to do is be able to run that command against that board. And so in my case, I have a Raspberry Pi, and I'm going to go ahead and just SSH into it, even though you could easily do this by having an attached keyboard and monitor as well. And I'm in, and I'm just going to paste in that command and let it run. And so here we go. There's going to be a whole bunch of steps. We won't watch this because we're going to go do something else while this happens. But the gist is we're going to go in here and check out the environment and put in anything that's still missing, and get down to installing the ioFog agent along with those dependencies that we've just installed. And that's going to cause it to pop up in my Darcy Cloud as an active node. So we're initializing, and we'll see that go live after the this Edge node is added to the Edge infrastructure here. And so while that's happening, I'll go ahead and outline some of the next things that we're going to do, and we'll get started. So I'm going to, when this Edge node comes up with the Google Coral and Camera Edge resources, I'm going to deploy a demo application that allows me to see that not only is the Edge node working and those Edge resources are able to be tapped, but also see some of the power that can be pushed out just a click of a button with ioFog 3 application templates. And so I will do that in just a moment after this finishes onboarding. And we can see here, we're at the step where the ioFog agent comes into the process. All the prerequisites are there. And as this comes in, it will provision, and then this node will go live. After I deploy that demo application, let's go ahead and build one raw. And I'm going to build it right on my MacBook. Now, I have an x86 MacBook Pro. And if you've done anything with edge computing to date, or even looked into it, you might be familiar with a very common problem, which is that normally, if you're going to push something that you've built to a Raspberry Pi, you're going to need to package that code and compile it for the different CPU architectures of all of your different edge nodes. Raspberry Pi is ARM-based, and my x86 MacBook is x86 based. That's why I'm mentioning it. So you're going to watch me in this demo do an amazing packaging process that allows all of the ioFog 3 infrastructure to do its thing, where it detects the target CPU architecture and moves the right binary onto that edge node, even though it was built on a completely different architecture. So I'll walk through those steps in a moment. I can see that this edge node is now online, and here we go. We've got information about it in my local environment. We also see that it shows up right in Berkeley, California, which is where I'm broadcasting from, which is my home. So if I want to deploy an application here, I get the options. These are a couple of templates that are loaded in. This would not be possible before ioFog 3. It would require tricky programming. And so with application templates, it's a breeze. It's the start of an app store. Well, the one I'm going to deploy, because I want to showcase that camera and that Google Coral AI accelerator, is the Darcy AI Explorer app. So as I go to deploy, I'm able to tap into application template fields and say, I'd like to make a UI from that. Great, I'll pick which node I want to put it out to. If I preview the app YAML, we can see that this has been filled in thanks to the templating. That's amazing. I'll go ahead and deploy now. And as I do, we get word from the infrastructure that it's deploying. It's currently queued. We'll watch this for a moment, because what's going to happen is this Edge application is going to change status, begin pulling, then start. And once it's started, I'll know that I can go ahead and open up the UI for it that's provided in my web browser, and we can check out the output of the Edge AI app. Wouldn't be a good demo if I didn't end up with something funny. We have an unknown state on the Edge microservice, and I'm wondering if that will just clear up in a moment, or if I'll need to actually check this out. Look at that. It clears right up as soon as it can get confirmation that the app is running. That's great. I love ioFog. So this is running with port 5555 exposed locally. Note that there's a variety of ways that you can expose ports, including public services and all kinds of fancy stuff. I would love to go into every little detail, but today I need to stay on point with the demo because we've got a lot of stuff to cover. Let's go ahead and look. We're at this IP address. Oh, I'll just copy that out of here, actually. That's nice and easy. Let's go to it now. And I want port 5555. Look at that. Here we go. This is the application called the Darcy AI Explorer. And this is using the Google Coral AI accelerator chip that's attached to this Raspberry Pi, which has been detected, is using that to do the AI processing. It comes with a video that's preset, and we'll watch this video roll on, and we'll process the people that pop through, and you can say, oh, I don't have a camera. I would like to just use that video. Oh, but I do have a camera, so let me turn on my live camera feed. Here we go. Well, let's process me instead as we look at this. And you'll note that the speed of processing here is quite impressive for a Raspberry Pi. Well, the AI accelerator makes it possible to keep up an amazing frame rate here. And so my person ID is anonymous. That's a feature that comes with the Darcy AI stuff that we've just deployed here. But I can go and I can poke around and I can take a look at things like what we call the POM, or the perception object model. I've paused the video so I can show it. Let's take a look at people. Oh, look at that. We've got a one person on the current frame. And we've got no QR code currently being read. That makes sense because I'm not showing one. How about information about a face mask? Now, I've got a bit of a beard and a bit of a shadow today, I guess maybe, is the detection of face mask. So I'll go ahead and restart that live video and we'll see that it jumps right back. Really cool stuff. Well, this app here is intended for you as a developer to get familiar with how to work with the system, and also to try out your edge nodes so that you can see the power. Okay, that's great. I would love to spend all day poking around in here and showing all of the features, but we've got more work to do in our demo. So I'll close this out, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to use this this application. So this is microservices, and I want to go up here and I want to take a look at Edge applications, and I want to remove this application. So I'm going to go ahead and delete, and we require confirmation because it's a destructive action here. So okay, great. Let me make sure I want to do that. And as I do this now, the application and its included microservices will be repealed from my Edge node. And so as I take a look at this Edge node and see nothing is listed any longer there, and the microservice is gone. This is all basic Eclipse ioFog stuff. If you've ever used it before, you know, oh, that's run of the mill. It's all of this new stuff that makes all of these really fancy interfaces and interactions possible. Real quick, I'm going to show something. If I want to get into my Raspberry Pi, which has been attached, click of a button, and I can get SSH access from anywhere without needing to have any open ports or VPNs to the Edge. So pretty cool. Oh, look at that. There's that router infrastructure that comes with ioFog. So just a little note, how do you operate your Edge environments, right? Okay, let's keep going and get into the next piece of the demo. Well, the next thing I want to do is I want to build on my MacBook an Edge AI application that can be deployed with Eclipse ioFog and all of that infrastructure seamlessly. And that means we need to go through the code, which I'm not going to write the code line by line. We don't have time for that. And as I see, we've got about 10 minutes left. I'm just going to move through this quickly. I've got a Darcy AI application, that's addressing that pillar of make it so that everyone can build. This code is going to work equally well on my x86 MacBook and my Raspberry Pi. And to demonstrate that, what I'm going to do, and it's also not very much code in order to build an application. That's all stuff that you can go check out. I highly encourage you to do that if you want to be doing Edge AI. I'm just going to go ahead and run this right out of VS Code, and it's just Python after all. And the cool thing is it's going to tap into my webcam in my MacBook. I'm using an additional webcam to do this broadcast so that I can show you this live. It's going to tap into the webcam on my MacBook and allow me to see this application that I've built running on my local dev environment, even though I don't have a Google Coral AI accelerator and all the stuff I have on my Raspberry Pi. And so I'll give this just a moment to come up. And when I see my MacBook webcam come up, I'll go ahead and open the UI and showcase this application that I've built and am running locally. So here I just need to do HTTP localhost 3456 is the port that I opened in the application, and here we go. So now you can see I'm running a simple Darcy AI Edge AI application, and as I am broadcasting this, you'll see that the frame rate is not as fast as that Raspberry Pi. That's because my x86 MacBook is from 2016, and it doesn't have an attached AI accelerator. No edge resource here to use, and so it's doing its best, but of course my AI application is running at whatever speed it can keep up with, and we'll see a far greater performance when we deploy this package and deploy it out to that edge node. So that application clearly works. Let's go ahead and turn that off. And now that I have the application, what do we do to actually package it for deployment across the ioFog infrastructure? Well, we need a Docker file. Turns out that it's really simple. You've got your base image, and I've just got a command in here to include the latest Darcy AI Python library. That's for my app. Copy the Python in, and then the command is run the Python. This is a really simple Docker file. We like to make it easy. The build commands I have laid out in a little text file for myself to make sure that I don't mess up the demo. And also, if we go back and look here, we can see that everything was installed successfully. I'm going to get out of the SSH session with that Raspberry Pi. Let's go ahead and do the Docker packaging live. Well, so first thing that I'm going to do, note that on my system I have it set up for Docker requires sudo. It's an old, I've been using Docker on Mac for a long time. And so I need to create a buildx namespace. Well, I'm going to call this just Edge Day, and that's because I want to do this fresh so you can watch it happen. What I'm doing is I'm creating a space in which I can build a manifest and do cross-platform packaging using Docker. Amazing stuff. All right, I made the space, and now I'm going to tell Docker to use that space. Easy enough. And here comes the magic, and then we'll watch this transpire. I have here a command that I'll walk through before I execute it. Buildx, build. The tag is, I've called it, so my Docker account, Kilton, then Edge IoT Day demo, and let's do 1.0.1 just for making sure that it builds fresh and I'm not cheating and using something pre-built. Platform, super important. Let's do x86 64, which is called AMD 64, ARM 64, ARM v7. And then I'm just going to automatically push, and the dot, of course, if you do Docker stuff regularly, find the Docker file in the local directory. So let's go ahead and get this command ready. And I'm going to execute this on my MacBook command line. This is important to note, x86 MacBook, here we go. What's going to happen is that we're going to build across all of these platforms and create a manifest for this containerized or packaged Edge AI application. Eclipse ioFog knows how to detect the architecture of all of the edge nodes and how to pick what to deploy. So what's amazing here is that I can work on any laptop I want, Windows laptop, a Mac laptop, whatever, Linux laptop, x86, ARM, doesn't matter. And after I'm done doing my work, I follow these steps, and the same thing that I built locally is able to run on edge nodes, except it might be able to take advantage of speed increases from AI accelerator chips and might be able to use the camera that's on the edge node. This is absolutely amazing because normally you'd probably have to write a lot more code to do the detection of a camera and this and that, because the differences between your dev environment and your deployment environment are typically pretty vast. So we'll watch this go through, and it's going to build out that application, and then we'll move to deploying it. So the last steps that I'll show you, and then we'll wrap up the demo and the entire talk, is I need a YAML file for deploy. And so I have a deploy YAML right here that we're going to use. And all I want to change on this is, I won't get into application templating with this at the moment. I'll just go ahead and use my direct agent, what we call directed deploy. But I'm going to change this to my new tag. As you can see, the YAML for deploy is quite small. And then this is available and for me to deploy to the through the Darcy Cloud, which is leveraging Eclipse ioFog 3 underneath. That's all it is. And so let's check out the build here and see. I hope that this completes in time. An alternative, since we are running short on time, if it doesn't finish up in a moment, would be to deploy the one that I had built prior to the demo, just because it's already packaged. But ideally, we'll watch this all go through, and we can see it all come through in action. But I have a concern that this might take a little bit longer than we'd like. So yeah, let's go ahead and make sure we have time for Q&A. What I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy the one from yesterday, as this is taking a couple of minutes to build. But the one from yesterday is the exact same code. And so what I have is version 1.0.0, which has already been pushed up to my Docker Hub. And I want to replace this with my actual edge node here. I just go up here and, oh, copy. Great. That's great, because we know you're going to need that. And I'll just replace that right in here. Excellent. And let me go and save all. And now if I want to push this out to this node, I'm going to go ahead and deploy an app, but this time I'm going to upload my own. So let's browse. And this should open a browser here. And let's go ahead and use that deploy YAML that I just updated. Here we go. And if it's successful, yay, we get deploying application. And here we go. Now we've got it queued, and we're going to watch it go through. Just out of curiosity, I want to see if we're done building. No, not quite yet. I'm glad I made the call to switch over to doing the existing one so we can see it in action. So it's queued, and in a moment it'll switch to polling, starting, whatever the statuses are. It might move really quickly through those. Then I'm going to pull up on my Raspberry Pi the application, which is the exact same code I just ran on my x86 MacBook, and it'll be running on this Raspberry Pi flawlessly, but it will be accelerated. Okay, it says it's running. Well, I have that same IP address here, and I am going to take a look at it with port 3456, which is what I had opened. HTTP, here we go, and 3456. Let's check it out. Oh, look at that, that's great. That's the same application, but look how fast the frame rate is compared to my MacBook Pro. Edge resources for the win, right? As I'm able now to detect that Google Coral AI accelerator chip and that camera and make this application fly. Isn't that amazing? I built it on my MacBook. Super easy to build an Edge AI app. That infrastructure of ioFog 3 is amazing. And so we've gone full circle now, and I have accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish. And now I'm able, as an Edge AI developer, to leverage all of this infrastructure to get that solution out the door to 1,000 edge nodes and beyond. So that concludes the demo, and that concludes also everything I wanted in the talk. What I'm going to do now is we'll put up this link slide in the background for the last minute here while we do Q&A, and I'll go ahead and stop my screen share, and there we go.
All right. Thank you so much, Kilton. A great presentation and a really amazing demo, as some people mentioned in the chat. Now, we don't have questions in the chat, so if you have any question, please add them. But let's dig a bit around what you just showed about this multi-architecture support in the platform. So obviously there you made things a bit easier since you are using Python, and that you expect that to be available on most sensible platforms.
Yes.
But let's say I'm using C, TensorFlow, something like that. Would it work the same?
Yes. What you're going to do in that scenario is your Docker file will get more complex because the scripting language can simply include the file and the engine will be included. But if you need to actually build for different architectures, your Docker file will have actual make commands and those types of things. But the concept is essentially the same as building a single architecture Docker container or Linux kernel container. Now you would just add that into your Docker file.
And I suppose in any case, if you're working with, say, C++, you're working with CMake that make abstraction of the environment and things like that. So that's the usual bag of tricks, and ioFog doesn't add a layer of complexity over that.
That's right. There's no additional complexity. We make things as hard as they were without ioFog, or easier.
Easier, certainly, in many of the aspects you cover.
That's right. We have a link that's up here on the screen. There's a special post that we've put up for this talk. So at darcy.ai articles Edge Days, so you can get that link. If anyone needs it, you get me on the swap card app as well, and I can answer questions there. I also put a link to a really great publication called The Edge of Things that has emerged and is just getting started, but already has great articles there about zero-touch deploy of edge nodes, and is something that I encourage everyone to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I put in the chat on Swapcard the link to the medium.com publication. And the Edge of Things is many things. It's a publication on Medium, and it's a series of webinars. And on June 1st, you and I are having a conversation on edge device security, and specifically on something called device attestation. So can you tease our audience a bit today about what that will be?
Oh, absolutely. So if you think about an Edge AI app that you're going to build, and then you think about deploying it out to 200 customer locations at scale, you are going to need to know that those devices are the devices that they're supposed to be when your customers go and plug them in, if you're going to allow them to come online and begin to charge a customer for the solution and run the application. How do you know that? Built into every piece of hardware, you have to have the underpinnings of device attestation, and it starts with the hardware root of trust that needs to be built into the device. From there, you can say, the hardware looks correct. It's attesting everything accurately. I think I can trust this. Then when you deploy applications to it, you know that it's not running on some hacker's laptop sitting in a Starbucks connected to your Wi-Fi from across the street, right? And so this is the underpinnings of edge computing at scale. Without it, you are really just saying that you'll deploy software, but you have no real confirmation that it's running on what it's supposed to be running on, or that things are still safe. And so it's an exciting topic because it's the foundation piece. It's a little complex, but it is well worth understanding how this all comes together, because the future world we're going to be living in over the next 20 years will increasingly have physical location computing, such as in your car or in your home or in your office or your warehouse, and understanding how the device attests that it's still viable and trustworthy. And it's something everybody should know.
Yes. So if you want to catch this conversation, the link is in the chat. The second link I put in the chat, in fact. So you click on that, you register, and you can watch the conversation on June 1st. So Kilton, thank you so much once again for the great presentation. Thank you everyone for attending this session.